What do you think about guns in schools? This is Alan with Quarter Horse Arms, and no, I'm not talking about students having guns. I got to see enough of that in New York. And in fact, they even taught me how to sneak them in past the metal detectors and x-ray machines. But that's neither here nor there. The big question is, given the light of the number of mass shootings that are taking place in public schools, or in schools in general, should teachers be armed? And the numbers are weird. One poll shows 45% of the adults surveyed said teachers need to be armed. Another poll, this one of educators, said 75% of educators said no, they should not. Our job is to educate, not to necessarily walk around with a gun. 32 states either have armed teachers in classrooms or have pathways that allow it to happen, meaning, some districts or states you can get a basically written permission to have the gun on your person while at school. I think is it Florida? I think it's like 45 out of 75 or 78 school districts have armed teachers. So we're looking at, large numbers of school staff potentially carrying guns. And, while there's, some potential interesting results, for someone carrying a gun, I can see a lot of bad things as well. I mean, the ha-ha funny, I think it was Oklahoma, some teacher pulling up her pants in the bathroom shot the toilet. Well, on the fun side was, yeah, she got a ticket for discharging a firearm in city limits, and luckily no one was injured as a result, other than, I believe, the toilet having to be replaced. But let's talk about some of the legitimate issues, pertaining to this. Ohio requires 24 hours of training for a staff member to carry a gun at school. All right, well, is 24 hours enough? I mean, police during their training go through somewhere, I think, between 100 and 150 hours of just shooting time alone and dealing with situations. So is 24 hours enough? Some states, it's just if you have a carry permit for that state, that's all the training we want. What is the likelihood of the firearm getting misused? I mean, I have visions of a teacher pointing a gun at a kid saying, sit down. I told you to sit down. And it sounds funny, but there's been incidents similar to that. So, people's tempers get hot, blood pressure goes up, and you've got a potential gun involved. The other one is, what if the gun's a target? Meaning, you're in a school, and if you're like my school, most of the cameras don't work. So a teacher carrying a gun gets jumped by a bunch of kids and the gun gets taken. And nobody gets to see who done it. That's a big issue. It's not only that. What if teacher loses a gun? Or a kid finds the gun? And you're going, well, Alan, you're making all this crap up. And the funny thing is, no, I'm not. This is stuff that happened. Guns have been found belonging to staff members or issued to staff members where they were dropped. In one case, I think left on the bleachers at a sporting event. Kid found it somewhere, picked it up. And, luckily that didn't result in anybody getting hurt. So my question is there enough training? And the other question is, who's going to provide the training? And everyone's going to say, hey, that's what we have police departments for. It might surprise you, but there are lots of police departments that want nothing to do with armed teachers. And you're going, well, that's pretty harsh. Well, it might be, but what about the liability? They train you as a teacher to carry a gun and to respond to situations using your gun, and somebody gets shot or killed. The agency that provided the training might have some liability in there. So they may be hesitant about that. The other thing that comes up is, think about this. With the situations that have occurred in schools, and I'm going to use Uvalde as an outlier, where the police just kind of stood around for quite some time. But if you're looking at, let's say, an active shooter, some of you may have seen the video from the Nashville shooting, which brought to light a lot of things. But if you watch the body cam videos, those law enforcement officers were moving at a pretty good clip. And you could even hear at one point when they announced shots fired, they were moving even faster. These guys weren't playing around. Now, what if, and this is all hypothetical, what if in that school you were an armed teacher, hearing the gunfire, had your gun out? The police see you, you can get shot. Or everyone's stressed out and you see a gun coming around the corner before the person and you open fire and a police officer gets shot. I could see armed faculty actually being an impediment or creating a dangerous situation or allow a dangerous situation to develop. Do I have any proof of this? No, and I hope to God I never have to find out. But I could see the armed teachers looking for a shooter and potentially causing more casualties because of the confusion. And this is why I said Uvalde was the outlier, actually getting to see the body cam of these police at the, I guess it was a private school, where the person shot their way through the door. So this wasn't I walked in and I'm going to shoot up. Shot their way through the door, then started opening fire. And I think, was it 3 adults and 3 kids? I think 9-year-olds were all killed. I don't know that an armed teacher could have solved anything at that point. I'm not sure. I wasn't there, obviously. And, obviously I have mixed feelings about this. I mean, I am an educator. I am a gun dealer. And you're going to go, well, Alan, what do you think about this? And I say, I think it sucks. Would I agree to arming teachers? You know what? I have 2 thoughts about that. Number 1, I'll tell you what I told my kids at school. Have you seen some of the teachers in this building? Would you give them a gun? Which usually prompts laughter, and that's the funny answer. But the simple answer is maybe the school should be made a lot more safer first. If you've done everything you can to make the school as safe as humanly possible, and it still fails, then I might start advocating for arming teachers. But right now, the answer is no. I mean, if you look at schools, there's tons of windows. Well, they're not bulletproof. I mean, think about it. Bulletproof glass is expensive and it doesn't react well to ultraviolet radiation. So if it sits out in the sun long enough, you're going to have to replace it. Maybe it needs to be wire glass. The glass with a little wire mesh inside. I don't know. Maybe the outside doors that don't have windows should have little peephole things. So that whoever's on the other side of the door can see that it is somebody they know. Or maybe put a ring outside each door and, let them ring the bell and see if someone will let them in. But, there's a ton of things that could be done to make schools safer. And at one point where I teach, they were talking about removing the school resource officers. Uvalde pretty much ended that one. However, let's go back to my original thoughts, or other questions were, all right, so I got trained to carry a gun. What kind of ongoing training is going on? Whose guns do you use? Do I get to bring in my .45 and, walk around with it? Is everyone going to be standardized? Who's going to provide the guns? Does the district have a policy or policies in place for things like, I don't know, I may have left my gun somewhere, but I'm not 100% sure where. Well, besides making me look like a freaking idiot for having to have that conversation, what's the plan to try and recover the gun? What's the district policy for who gets to have the gun? And what if you're saying, Mr. or Miss So-and-so, you're the designated person for this part of the hallway to be armed. What if that person says no? Even simpler, will the school's insurance cover liability from teachers carrying guns? So what can we do? Well, right now, most schools, something serious happens, you either got to call the office, then you got to call 911, or call 911, then the office, and you got to hunt people down, which may not be the best thing to do. I mean, maybe part of making schools safer might be doing something as simple as putting a panic button in every office or classroom. So if something happens in my room, whether, a kid got hurt badly, or, hopefully it's not me, but, if I get hurt badly, you hit the panic button, siren goes off, the administrators know exactly where the problem is and can respond. Because in most places, the teachers don't have radios, and you're dependent on, is the school resource officer nearby? Is there an administrator nearby? So, long story short, I'm not convinced that arming teachers in schools would be a good thing. So I'll be in that 75% of the educators that say, no, let's not arm the teachers. I'm open to the idea, on the other hand, is if you can convince me that everything that you needed, that could be done to make the school safer, was done, and it still failed, then I'll say let's start considering it. But just as an outright fix to a problem, no, I don't think it would work. And for me, the negatives outweigh the positives too much to consider it. And the other thing is, I do not want to have to walk around knowing that maybe I accidentally shot a kid. Or, and this was an example given to me, which was, there's a shooter with 10 kids around them. And I take out the shooter and one of the kids. I save 9. Is that a bargain?